All of the capital knew that the daughter of the Duke of Bull was desperately in love with Alistair Pay. When Alistair went to the military camp, she would set up a tent and cook for him, fearing he wouldn't eat well. When he went on a diplomatic mission, she disguised herself as a groom, fearing the bumpy ride would disturb his sleep. The Sue and Pay families had been neighbors for generations. We had been childhood sweethearts, and I would marry no one but him. On the day of our wedding, a 10-mile procession of red dowry, the whole city celebrated. But Alistair abandoned me and traveled 1,000 miles to bring back his widowed cousin. But I still entered the Pay family, marrying the sickly and dying eldest son, Julian Pay. Half a month later, Alistair returned with his cousin in his arms. He stood before me, his tone harsh. My cousin will not contest your position as the main wife, but I hope you will be sensible and not disturb her. This man is such a fool. I was marrying into the Pay family, and he wasn't the only son in the family. A marriage alliance. It had helped my cousin be named Crown Prince, and my brother was in command of 3 armies. From now on, I would have power, money, and an impotent husband. All the good things in the world had fallen into my lap. What was Alistair in comparison? My brother immediately threw down the descendants bucket that the younger Pay son had been holding during the wedding procession. He had a fiery temper and was about to draw his sword and chase after Alistair. Who does he think he is? He can't trample on the dignity of the Duke's residence. I stood there in my bright red wedding gown, the pearls on my headdress tinkling in the autumn wind. A moment later, Alistair's young servant was brought in by the Pay family and thrown before me. He tremblingly handed me a letter. The second master said to postpone the wedding for 10 days. He will keep his promise and come back to marry you. My brother kicked the servant to the ground, so angry he wanted to kill someone. I stopped him. The farce has already happened. If we kill someone now, it won't resolve anything. It will only make our family a bigger laughingstock. Chloe is so calm, my father said, taking the sword from my brother's hand. The 2 Pay elders also arrived. They had watched me grow up and were now filled with guilt. They said all the right things. I sat quietly, letting the tears fall. My brother asked me, "What now?" "Wait for Alistair for 10 days. Everyone looked at me, waiting for my answer. The wedding date was chosen by the imperial astronomer as an auspicious day. His Majesty and the Empress have both approved it. It cannot be changed. I lowered the veil that I had rolled up and said quietly, "The wedding will proceed as scheduled, but the groom will be changed." The Pay family had 2 legitimate sons. The eldest, Julian Pay, was from a previous wife, but he had been sickly since childhood and had been bedridden for over 10 years. It was rumored that he would not live long. Changing the groom was no small matter. After their initial shock, the 2 sets of elders tried to persuade me, but my mind was made up. "Uncle, please ask Brother Julian. If he is unwilling, the wedding will be called off today. If he is willing, the alliance between our 2 families will remain." To everyone's surprise, Julian agreed. In the main hall, Julian, struggling to stand, went through the wedding ceremony with me and then returned to his room. I was helped to the bridal chamber by the wedding attendants. Time was tight, so they could only take the red silk from the second son's chambers and hang it on the eldest son's door. But the Pay family servants were quick and efficient, and there was no sign of haste. The atmosphere was still festive. I sat on the end of the bed. At the head of the bed lay the sickly groom. Julian and I exchanged polite greetings. That night, I slept on the soft couch. Julian kept his eyes closed, as if he could stop breathing at any moment. The farce was over. In the quiet, my heart began to ache. The Sue and Pay families were old friends. They had fought alongside the late emperor to establish the dynasty and were later both enfeoffed as dukes. For all these years, the 2 families had lived next door to each other. So, Alistair and I had known each other since birth. And from the moment I was old enough to understand, I knew I loved Alistair. Not only did I know, but the whole of the capital knew. The eldest daughter of the Duke of Ingua was madly in love with the second young master of the Pay family. When men talked, they would always say, "May you also meet a like Miss Sue." The women, on the other hand, were disdainful of me. They thought that a duke's daughter, to love a man to such an extent, was demeaning herself. I didn't care. I knew what I wanted, so I had no regrets. But Alistair cared. He would often lose his temper. "Chloe, Do you love me so much that you have no self-respect? He thought he could anger me away, but I would just smile at him. Yes, I love you. Second brother. I love you so much. Usually at this point, Alistair would storm off in a rage, and for the next few days, no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find him. Of course, Alistair had his good moments too. Every time he returned from an official trip, he would bring me local delicacies and little trinkets that couldn't be found in the capital. When I was crying from his anger, he would also humble himself. Good sister. Second brother was wrong. Why don't you hit me? As long as you're not angry, you can beat me to death. After he said that, he would grab my hand and lightly slap his own face, waiting for me to smile through my tears. I knew my sister loved me the most. I would glare at him, and the unhappiness would dissipate like the wind. When I was 13, Alistair and I had a big fight. That time, we almost broke up for good. The reason for the fight was Thea Chiao. That year, when she was getting married, Alistair had blocked the way with a red, tasseled spear, not allowing the sedan chair to leave. No matter how the family tried to persuade him, he wouldn't budge. His mother was so angry she slapped him and said, "Your wife can only be Chloe. Don't even think about anyone else." Of course, Thea left, but Alistair took his anger out on me. He rushed into my room and threw away all the things he had given me. He even pointed at my nose and cursed. I'm telling you, I love my cousin. I love her very, very much. I will never love you. I stood opposite him, my body cold, but not a single tear fell. Seeing that I wasn't making a scene, just watching him quietly, he felt a little unsure of himself and left. Of course, he came to apologize later, saying he was just sad to see his cousin go, that his love for his cousin and his love for me were different. I never thought that 5 years later, when we were getting married, the same thing would happen, and this time, at our own wedding. Life after marriage was uneventful. The groom was bedridden, and we were polite and proper, and my life was no different from when I was at home. The day Alistair returned, I was in the greenhouse, tending to my new peonies. My gaze went past him to the frail Thea Chiao standing in the shade of a tree. Thea Chiao was the only daughter of Alistair's maternal aunt. After his aunt's death, his uncle had remarried. Fearing his niece would not be treated well, his mother had brought Thea to live with them. When she grew up, his mother had found a match for Thea. Besides being far away, the match was almost perfect. But I didn't expect that after only 5 years of marriage, something had gone wrong with her marriage, and she had returned home. Chloe, I told you to wait for me for 10 days. Why didn't you? Alistair questioned me. Do you think, in that situation, our two families could have waited? The invitations had been sent out. The guests, both near and far, were already seated, and even a few nobles from the palace were waiting. So, neither the Pei family nor the Su family could afford to wait. Alistair was at a loss for words. I was just afraid you would be wronged. My grievance was that you abandoned me and left. I wiped my hands and poured myself a cup of tea. Alistair, perhaps feeling a little guilty, was about to say something, but Thea's cough from behind him made him swallow his words. Since you're here, you're here. But I have something to tell you. I've brought my cousin back with me. Yes. And perhaps my cold tone displeased him, because he also became sullen. My cousin will not contest your position as the main wife, but I hope you will be sensible and not disturb her. I looked at him in surprise. After you got home, didn't you go to pay your respects to your parents first? He frowned. I came to see you as soon as I got back. What do you mean? Then go and pay your respects to your parents. After all, Mrs. Lu's return is a big deal. You should also discuss with your parents how she will be settled in the future. I'll go. I've made up my mind. This time, no matter who opposes me, I will take my cousin as a concubine. Alistair walked over to Thea. They looked at each other, their eyes full of affection, and walked side by side towards the main courtyard. After taking 7 or 8 steps, Thea suddenly glanced at me. Her eyes were full of triumph and victory, as if to say, "It's been 5 years. Alistair is mine. You can't take him." Yara, my maid, looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Doesn't the second young master know that you're his sister? In law now." I threw the dirty handkerchief and left the greenhouse. It's going to snow. I'm going back to see if my husband has taken his medicine. The Duke of Yuan's residence was very large. 2-5. Courtyard houses had been combined into one, divided into a left and a right courtyard. The Duke, his wife, and Alistair lived in the right courtyard. The left courtyard housed Julian and the two illegitimate third and fourth masters. When I used to visit Alistair, I would always be in the right courtyard. I had only been to the left courtyard a few times with Alistair to fish and dig for spring bamboo shoots. Now that I was living here, I found that although the left courtyard was quiet, it was more elegant and serene. When I returned to my room, Julian had just taken his medicine and was resting, so I went to have lunch by myself. As I was eating, a matron came to report, "The young mistress's cousin is asking to see you." Oh. I ate my lunch unhurriedly and then had Thea brought in. Miss Sue. Compared to 5 years ago, she was a little haggard, but her temperament had gained a certain soft charm. "Mrs. Liu, what can I do for you?" Her husband's surname was Liu. I didn't know why she had returned, so I deliberately called her Mrs. Liu. Thea sneered. "You're still the same as when you were a child, arrogant and spoiled." I was non-committal. "Chloe, you're just from a better family. What's there to be so proud of?" "Mrs. Liu, if you're going to talk to me like that, I'll have you kneel and pay your respects," I said. "You." Thea was so angry she twisted her handkerchief. "It's useless for you to be proud. Alistair has loved me since we were children. No matter how much you throw yourself at him, he doesn't have you in his heart. Did your husband's family find out about your constant and ambiguous correspondence with Alistair and divorce you?" I was just guessing, but when Thea heard it, her face turned extremely ugly. I raised my eyebrows. Could I have guessed right? "Chloe, don't be so smug. You'll end up the same way. I will make him divorce you." I rolled my eyes and said to the matron at the door, "Throw her out." The matron came to pull Thea. She became anxious. "Chloe, Alistair was just beaten with 30 strokes by the Duke and locked in the ancestral hall. Aren't you worried at all? Even if you're jealous of me and hate that he has me in his heart, you should think of the bigger picture. He's your husband. If he's sick or crippled, what good will that do you?" After she finished speaking, I sneered. "I remember you used to be very smart. How did you become so stupid in the Northwest?" She was stunned, not understanding. I pointed to the courtyard outside. "Where is this?" Thea was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized something. Her eyes widened, and she began to look around, then let out a sharp cry. "Chloe, you didn't wait for him. You married Julian." Chloe laughed, and laughed for a long time. "You couldn't marry him, so you became his sister-in-law. What a brilliant move. You're crazy. You're all crazy." She pushed the matron away and stumbled out. "Miss, is she possessed by a ghost?" Yara stared at Thea's distraught figure. "Just a clown. Pack your things. I'm going to the palace tomorrow to pay my respects." The Empress was the Duke of Pei's youngest sister. She had been in the palace for 12 years and had no children. When she saw me, she asked anxiously, "I heard Alistair is back. Did he cause trouble when he found out you married Julian?" I started to cry and said with a look of grievance, "He came to my courtyard as soon as he got back and said he wanted to take Mrs. Liu as a concubine." The Empress sneered. "He's lost his mind. In a few days, when he's out of the ancestral hall, if he causes any trouble, you can have someone tell me. I'll break his legs." "Of course." I thanked her with a look of grievance. The Empress sighed. "How is Julian's health?" "He spoke to me this morning before I left. He told me to be careful on the road and to send his greetings to you when I arrived at the palace." "Don't be afraid. You and Julian's good fortune is yet to come." I lowered my head and continued to cry. All right. Stop crying. Look who's here." As she spoke, a 10-year-old boy entered from outside. I quickly stood up and curtsied. "Greetings to the third prince." Young took a few quick steps and helped me up. "Cousin, after you got married, have you been well?" "I've been well. And you? Have you been studying hard at the academy?" Young nodded. The tutor even praised me. I stroked his head with a look of pity. "Look at you two, crying and laughing. Anyone would think you haven't seen each other in years," the Empress said with a mock scolding tone. Then instructed Young. "Some oranges were sent from outside the palace this morning. Go and peel some for your cousin-in-law." I looked at the Empress in surprise. "Yes, His Majesty personally brought the third prince to the Phoenix Palace last night. I was overjoyed. Yuyong was my aunt's son, my own cousin. 13 years ago, when the current emperor was choosing an empress, both my aunt and the current empress were candidates. In the end, the emperor chose the daughter of the Pei family, and my aunt was named a noble consort. However, both the empress and my aunt were unfortunate. The empress never had any children, and my aunt died of illness when Yuyong was 3. Yuyong had always been a source of worry for our entire family. We were afraid he would not be well, that he would be bullied, until a few years ago, someone suggested that Yuyong be adopted by the empress. This was a major event. After all, once Yuyong was adopted by the empress, he would be the legitimate son. With 2 powerful maternal families, he would have another advantage in the competition for the crown prince. The empress had also hinted at it to my mother once, but she had only spoken half a sentence. At that time, our whole family knew that she was waiting for me and Alistair to get married. Only when the interests of the Pei and Su families were closely linked would she truly let go and support Yuyong's ascension to the position of crown prince. When I left the palace, I first went back to my parents' house. My mother told me that His Majesty had returned my brother's military command. I was so happy I almost cried. Ever since His Majesty had taken away my brother's military command, our family had been walking on eggshells in the court, not daring to make a single misstep. Now that the military command was back, this meant that His Majesty might be paving the way for Yuyong. The imperial astronomer is choosing a date. The matter of the crown prince will definitely be settled before the new year. Our whole family can finally sleep soundly. I chanted, Amitba, 7 or 8 times. I hoped that there would be no more complications. But it's hard on you. If Julian dies, what will you do? My mother, thinking of me, started to cry again. If Julian dies, I'll be his widow. I would be a powerful and wealthy Su family matriarch. If I wanted peace and quiet, I would live in a separate courtyard. If I wanted to be surrounded by children and grandchildren, I would be generous. And my nephews and nieces would be filial to me. Just thinking about it made me feel that life would be wonderful. I was really worried that you would die for Alistair if you couldn't marry him. My mother stroked my head. You've suddenly grown up. Your father and I are very pleased. I wouldn't die for him, but I was definitely heartbroken. After all, from a young age, all my future life plans had included Alistair. But Alistair was not as important as the prosperity of my family, and certainly not as important as my own life. I'm going back. Julian has another dose of medicine at noon. I have to make sure he takes it. My mother saw me to the door and watched me enter the Su residence before she went back. When I passed through the left courtyard, I went to greet my mother. In-law. She asked me to stay for lunch, and I didn't refuse. Human nature is very strange. Alistair had run away from the wedding, and my mother, in-law, was guilty towards me. But if I acted too nonchalant, or if I showed any affection for Julian, her guilt would turn to anger. She might even suspect that Julian and I had conspired, that it was all intentional. So, at lunch, I only ate a small bite and cried a little before returning to my own courtyard. Julian seemed to be in particularly good spirits today. He was even out in the sun. He was very thin, wearing a royal blue cloak and leaning against a soft couch covered with a white fur blanket. His features were very similar to the Duke of Pei's, very handsome and with a faint heroic air. If he were healthy, many women would surely admire him. Of course, if he were healthy, the Duke of Pei would have already had him named the heir. You're back. His voice was also very pleasant, unhurried, like the gentle plucking of a bowstring. Brother. I curtsied and sat down in the chair that Yara had brought. Have you taken your medicine? Yes. Thank you for your trouble. He coughed lightly. Was your trip to the palace smooth? Did you see the third prince? I did. His Majesty personally brought Yuyong to the Phoenix Palace last night. Yuyong will have to call me cousin. In-law from now on. I haven't seen the third prince yet. Is he 10 this year? Julian looked into the distance, a look of regret in his eyes. Yes. He just had his 10th birthday. Next time, I'll have him come to our house to play and pay his respects to you. I wouldn't dare to have him pay his respects. He can come for a visit. I said okay. After a few words, Julian seemed to be tired. He closed his eyes slightly. and I didn't know if he was asleep or just resting. I watched him quietly for a while, then stood up and went back to my room. I said to Yara in a low voice, "Go and get the white cloth from the bottom of my chest. I have nothing to do lately, so I'll make some morning clothes." Yara glanced outside the door. "Miss, do you think the eldest young master's time is short? It's better to be prepared," I said, leaning against the window and looking at the quiet Julian in the courtyard. "Go and find a craftsman to renovate the other courtyard. When Julian is gone, we'll move there. Is that a good idea? I'm going to the other courtyard to be a widow, not to remarry. What's wrong with that? Go and tell the craftsman to make the garden bigger and to save the land outside for me too. I wanted to have a peony garden. Every morning, when I opened the door, there would be warm sun, a gentle breeze, and a courtyard full of flowers. And I'll get a Persian cat, 2 dogs, and some rabbits, and a mynah bird, the chirping of birds and the fragrance of flowers. A life without the supervision of elders and the interference of a husband. I wouldn't trade it for anything." I couldn't wait for Yara to make the arrangements. The next day, I found a foreman myself and took them to my other courtyard. "We'll put a taihu rock here. Find some unusual ones. Here." I pointed to the side of the rockery. "We'll plant grapes. We'll build a swing under the grapes and put a table there. In the summer, we could eat melons and enjoy the cool air there." We went into the room. "Yara, I want royal blue curtains, pink bed curtains, and for the window screens, I want smoke-colored gauze, the kind that lets the light through in a hazy way." "Miss, you're being too extravagant," Yara said. "Mind your own business. From now on, my life is my own. I'll do whatever I want." When I got tired of royal blue, I would switch to pink, yellow, hibiscus. "I also want to have an opera troupe." I said a lot of things, and Yara followed behind, taking notes. The more she wrote, the more she sighed. "Miss, I feel like you're living the life of a wastrel." I chuckled. "Now you see the benefits of marrying Julian, don't you?" My mother was afraid I would be a widow. She didn't know how wonderful the life of a rich widow was. Yara was speechless. I returned home in high spirits, but as I entered the courtyard, an uninvited guest arrived. "Julian, come out." Alistair's voice preceded him. He kicked open the bamboo gate and entered the courtyard. He was furious, holding a sword and looking menacingly at me. "Chloe, don't be afraid. I'll kill this shameless, incestuous wretch." "Julian." Today, the Duke of Pei had said he would be confined for half a month. Today was only the 8th day, and he was already out. It seems his mother had worked very hard. I gave Yara a look, telling her to go and get help. From what I knew of Alistair, he might really try to hurt Julian. "Chloe, no one can force you to marry someone else." I frowned. "Stop imagining things. Marrying Julian is much better than marrying you." Alistair didn't believe me at all. "Impossible. You've been determined to marry me since you were a child. Only I can give you happiness. You were also determined to be a general since you were a child. But you're still a nobody." I made a gesture of invitation. "Second young master of the Pei family. From now on, we will go our separate ways. Please leave." Alistair tried to grab my hand. Yara came up and pushed him out. "Second young master, you were the one who ran away from the wedding. It's useless to say anything more now. Please leave." "I'm not leaving. I want to see Julian," Alistair said angrily. "I'm going to kill him, no matter what I said." Alistair didn't believe me. He was convinced that I had been forced. He wanted to kill Julian and take me away. Looking at his flailing, thoughtless antics, I suddenly found it laughable. "Alistair." I blocked his way. "Our two families are in a marriage alliance. Interests are paramount. Since you didn't want to marry me, of course I could marry Julian. How can that be the same?" Alistair raised his voice, as if trying to drown out my own. "Damn the interests. We were childhood sweethearts. You've loved me since you were a child. We are in love." He grabbed my hand, arguing and wanting to go with me to find his father, to find my parents. "This marriage is not valid." Just then, a voice came from behind. "Second brother, where are you taking my wife?" Julian opened the door, wearing a robe, looking very thin. "Julian, you dare to come out, you shameless wretch." Alistair rushed forward with his sword. I didn't even see what happened, but Julian spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. I was shocked. I went up and slapped Alistair across the face. Are you crazy? Get out. Get out. Alistair was in disbelief. You hit me for someone else. If he dies now, not only will I hit you, I will kill you. A stupid, unlucky man. Alistair's face turned pale, as if he had just met me. I couldn't be bothered with him. I helped Julian to lie down with the others and then went to find a doctor. I was so busy that I didn't even pay attention when the Duke of Pei arrived and took Alistair away. That night, Julian had a fever. The doctor said that Alistair had martial arts skills and had not held back. Julian had suffered an internal injury. The second young master wants to kill our master. Tianqing's eyes were swollen from crying. He kept talking. No good has come of this. Only bad things. The master is so unlucky. Yara was not happy to hear this. She put her hands on her hips and scolded him. What do you mean no good has come of this? The master has married my young lady. Isn't that a great thing? Tianqing was only 15, and he was built like a bear, but he was very childish. He stood up and shouted. The young lady didn't really want to marry him. Say that again. Yara said. I'll tear your mouth off. I'll say it even if you tear my mouth off. Yara couldn't tear his mouth, so she just spat at him a few times in frustration. Tianqing was crying and wiping his face. I rubbed my temples and sent them both out. In truth, Tianqing was right. I had used a dying man in an emergency. My problem was solved. But what about Julian? He had gained nothing. He had been suffering since he was a child. He had lost his mother at a young age and had been living alone since he was 3. The Duke and his wife had spoiled Alistair rotten. But Julian, with his sick body, had lived alone in the left courtyard for over 10 years. Neglected. Now, on his deathbed, he had gotten into trouble because of me. If he were healthy, it would be a different story, with me as his wife. The Duke of Pei would certainly not hesitate to have him named the heir. But he was dying. Tianqing, Julian said in a daze. Water. I quickly poured him some water and helped him up to drink. He drank and then lay back down. But he held my hand. I tried to pull it away, but I couldn't, so I let him hold it. Julian's hand was as thin as he was, his fingers slender, like bamboo branches. I felt even more guilty. That night, he held my hand and didn't let go. In the latter half of the night, I was so tired I fell asleep with my head on the side of the bed. When I woke up in the morning, I was lying next to Julian, with one of my legs on top of him. I don't know how I got there. Had I been so tired that I had unconsciously crawled into his bed. I was so ashamed I couldn't face him. I quickly got out of bed and said, trying to find something to say, Brother, you haven't eaten all night. Would you like some clear porridge? All right. Fortunately, Julian didn't seem to mind that I had slept in his bed. I was so afraid he would think I had done it on purpose, to force him to do something, to leave me with an heir to rely on. After Alistair had caused trouble, he was confined to his room by the Duke of Pei. My brother even went and kicked him. My mother came to visit Julian. When she was leaving, she said to me quietly, he's been sick for over 10 years. I thought he would be emaciated and foolish, but after talking to him today, I have a new opinion of him. I had been surprised by my mother's words. We had all thought Julian was a fool, but in reality, he was very different from what we had imagined. Forget it. Although he's not as healthy and clever as Alistair, he's at least honest. Before he dies, be good to him. Don't mistreat him. That's what I thought too. My mother chanted, Amitba, and said she was going to the temple to pray for a long life for Julian. After that night, Julian and I were much more natural with each other. I felt guilty towards him, so I was trying to make it up to him. The weather was nice today. On a whim, I asked him if he wanted to go to the West Mountain to see the red leaves. I thought he would refuse, but he agreed readily. I quickly made preparations. I had the seats in the carriage removed and replaced with thick quilts and blankets. If it weren't for Chloe, I'm afraid I would have never left the house until I died. Brother, don't say such depressing things. Your health will definitely get better. Chloe wants my health to get better, he asked, his eyes full of anticipation. Of course. I nodded. I hope you live a long life. Julian didn't speak, just looked at me quietly. My heart skipped a beat. And only then did I realize the true meaning behind his question. If he lived a long life, I would have to be a real wife to him, although I had never thought about it. If he really lived a long life, I would seriously consider it. It's still an hour's journey. Brother, Would you like to play a game of chess? I asked Julian. So we started a game. I had been taught the 6 arts by a tutor, and chess was my best skill. I used to play with Alistair occasionally. He could only last for 2/4 of an hour before he would get impatient and throw the pieces, either shouting that it was boring or trying to take back a move. But I didn't expect that today. When I played with Julian, I could only last for 2/4 of an hour, and I was already in a losing position, and there was no way to recover. I was very surprised. Julian had never been favored, and the Duke of Pei had not cared much about his studies. How could his chess skills be so good? It seems none of us knew Julian. After seeing the red leaves, I was afraid Julian would be tired, so I arranged for him to rest at a temple on the mountainside at noon. This temple was very small, with only 4 monks, and they were all flower monks who did not abstain from alcohol or meat. So, the temple had very few visitors, and the 4 monks, though they called themselves monks, actually lived off the rent of their land. The temple was unremarkable, except for a pond behind it. The pond had a hole, and it was said to be very effective for making wishes for marriage. They say that if it's true love, the coin will fall into the hole. Is that so? Then I'll try. Julian casually tossed a coin. I didn't think much of it, but the coin spun a few times on the surface of the water and then fell in. I was dumbfounded. Julian tapped my forehead, his tone teasing. What's with that expression? Are you sad that my coin fell in? No, not sad at all. I'm all happy. Julian stared into my eyes, as if trying to discern whether I was being sincere or not. I nervously took a step back. Julian chuckled and didn't pursue the topic. On the way back, Julian seemed to be in a good mood. He asked me, Chloe, yes, has the Imperial astronomer not chosen a date yet? I shook my head. It probably won't be until the end of the year. You really want the 3rd prince to be the crown prince? There was no one else in the carriage, so I didn't mince my words. Yes, very much. Of the 6 princes in the court, only Yuyang had no mother. Although his maternal family seemed prosperous, they were of military background and had a shallow foundation in the court. He was no match for the 2nd prince, whose maternal family was of scholarly background, nor for the 4th prince, whose uncle was a literary giant with disciples everywhere. In such a difficult situation, His Majesty had even taken away my brother's military command and had him serve as a minor official for 4 years. So, these past few years, our family had been walking on thin ice. For Yuyang to become the crown prince would be a good thing for everyone. Julian was thoughtful and said no more, but I felt that he had something more to say, that he hadn't finished. But since he didn't speak, I couldn't ask. Could it be that something had happened that I didn't know about? But my father and my brother didn't know. And Julian was at home every day. It was impossible for him to know more than them. The situation in the court became strange. His Majesty had not once mentioned the matter of the crown prince. Even when the ministers brought it up, he didn't respond. We all felt that something must have gone wrong, that His Majesty was hesitating again. I went to the palace to see the Empress. She mentioned the 2nd prince and the 4th prince. In this situation, we can only remain passive and see what they're going to do, the Empress said. When I got home, I discussed it with my family. For the past month, His Majesty has spent half of his time at Noble Consort Lu's residence and the other half at Consort Des Palace. He only went to the Empress's palace once in the middle of the month. My father was worried. The Emperor's heart is hard to fathom. I don't know what went wrong. We had all investigated secretly, but we hadn't found anything useful. If His Majesty was wary of the alliance between the Su and Pei families, but Yuyang had been sent to the Phoenix Palace the day after my wedding, and my brother's military command had also been given to him after my wedding. His attitude at that time had been very clear. Should we give it a push? My brother said. My father and I immediately understood what he meant. He wanted to find someone discreet to assassinate Yuyang, or if that didn't work, to assassinate the Empress. Self-inflicted injury, and then frame someone else, to give His Majesty a push. Are you stupid? If we get caught, we'll never have a chance to turn things around, my father said firmly. My brother mumbled something, then said, let's send a beauty in, to whisper in his ear. I rolled my eyes at my brother. We've already sent 2 beauties into the harem, although they had both been favored. His Majesty was not a foolish ruler. Pillow talk would be useless. Then what do we do now? The second prince and the fourth prince are very popular lately. We can only wait. My father took a sip of tea and glared at my brother. Don't do anything reckless, my brother said. Oh, then suddenly stared at me. Chloe, I think you should start planning for Julian's funeral. Otherwise, when the time comes, you'll be overwhelmed. I know. I suspect my brother's brain is inhabited by a monkey, jumping from one tree to another every day. You should also cut ties with Alistair completely. Julian is about to die. It would be a pity for him to be cuckolded on his deathbed. Brother, am I that kind of person? Can you just shut up? My father slapped the table. What cuckold? What white hat? You're always talking nonsense. If you're so free, go and get married. I'm not getting married. The situation is not yet settled. If our family is raided in the future, my son is so young. He can't. You. A dog's mouth can't spit out ivory. My father threw a teacup at him, but my brother was very skilled in martial arts and dodged it like a gust of wind. On the way home, I ran into Alistair. He was stumbling, smelling of alcohol, and being supported by Thea Chiao. He was cursing all the way. I urged Yara to walk faster, but Alistair still saw me. He stumbled towards me, his tone pleading. Chloe, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please come back. Okay, since you've brought Cousin Chiao back, you should live a good life together. Don't cause any more trouble. At this crucial moment for the crown prince, I was afraid Alistair would cause some trouble. I don't want my cousin. I don't want her. I don't want anyone but you, he said, grabbing my sleeve. Chloe, I can't live without you. I glanced at the pale Thea Chiao. Thea came up to support Alistair. You're drunk. I'll help you back to your room. Alistair pushed her away and held onto my sleeve. I was about to speak when I saw Julian, holding an umbrella, walking towards me on the path. It's you again. Julian, why don't you just die? Alistair roared. I'm trying to live. If you find death so interesting, you can go ahead, Julian said softly. Not in a hurry. Alistair was drunk and pointed at Julian, so angry he couldn't speak for a long time. I laughed out loud. I didn't expect Julian to be so sharp-tongued. It wasn't until February that anyone mentioned the matter of the crown prince again. But another major event happened. The second prince, Yulin, had a new tutor. He had become a student of Mr. Dongyong. When I heard it, I was stunned for a long time. What's wrong? Julian came out of the inner room. I didn't want him to worry about the affairs of the court, so I brushed it off. It's just some family matter. I'm going home for a while. Mr. Dongyong was no simple man. He and the fourth prince's uncle were the leaders of two opposing factions, and the civil officials in the court were also divided between them. The second prince's maternal family was already of scholarly background. Now with Mr. Dongyong's support, wouldn't he be even more powerful? I spent the whole way home guessing at His Majesty's intentions. When I got home, my father was dejected. Chloe, you've come at a good time. News from the Tsuaping Palace. The reason the second prince was able to become Mr. Dongyong's student was because His Majesty arranged it. My heart pounded. I had a guess. Is His Majesty trying to make the second prince and us fight it out to the death? I wouldn't dare to think so, but from the looks of it, it's very likely. I was still in a daze when I got home. I ran into the Duke of Pei, and he also asked about this matter, sighing. The Emperor's heart is hard to fathom. It was indeed hard to fathom. Now no one could guess what His Majesty was trying to do. Chloe is back. Julian was leaning against a soft couch in the warm pavilion, reading a book. Why do you look so down? After some thought, I told him about the affairs of the court. Mr. Dongyong, Yen Lu, is the only one who can compete with the fourth prince's uncle, Zhang Zhongshu. It has been said that all the scholars in the world are either named Zhang or Yen. I've heard of it. Julian poured me a cup of tea, his tone light. But the second prince has become his student. Why are you so anxious? Shouldn't the fourth prince be the one who is anxious? I waved my hand, about to argue with him, but suddenly froze. Yes, my family is of military background. The fourth prince's civil official faction is not anxious. Why should I be? You're right. We didn't even think of that. Those who are in the game are often confused. Julian was playing a game of chess by himself. Chloe, if you're not in a hurry, shall we play a game of chess? I wanted to say that I was in a hurry, that I wanted to go home and tell my father this conclusion. We, who were in the game, had been staring at ourselves, our vision narrow. He, the outsider, could see things clearly. But for some reason, after talking to him for a few minutes, I felt a sense of peace. Because of this matter, I had indeed lost my composure. This matter was not up to us to decide. The more anxious we were, the more likely we were to make mistakes. So I started to play chess with Julian. After about 10 moves, he suddenly laughed and pointed out 2 of my mistakes. 2 places. Do you want to save the left or the right? Save the right, I said with a smile. Thank you for not killing me, brother. Julian smiled and placed a piece. Then he captured my right side, not leaving a single piece. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Whoever is in a hurry, I will eat. You were the one who revealed your weakness. He was calm. I looked at the chessboard, where half of my pieces were gone. Suddenly, my hands and feet turned cold. Could it be? His Majesty was also thinking the same way. He was not yet 30, and we were already rushing to have him name a crown prince. How did he feel? It was as if we were rushing him to his death. So, whoever was the most anxious about the matter of the crown prince was running into his knife. Brother, save the chessboard. I'm going home for a while. We can play again tomorrow. Run slowly. Don't fall, he said softly. I know. I'll bring you some dumplings for a late night snack when I get back. Are they delicious? Your mother-in-law made them herself. I nodded. Tianqing said you like this filling. So my mother and I made a new filling just for you. Julian ate very elegantly, just like him, methodical and unhurried. This is from my brother. I took out a box of ginseng. Someone gave it to him earlier. They said it was 100-year-old ginseng. I don't know how to tell, but it looks good. Julian was surprised and raised his eyebrows. This is the first time Suziang has given me something. I was a little embarrassed. Although my brother was a duke's heir and never short of money, he was very stingy. He would split a single coin in 2. It was said that if any of his colleagues had ever been treated to a meal by my brother, they could boast about it in the army for years. Ahem. To be honest with you, when I got married, my brother only gave me 3,000 taels, and I had stolen that from his money box. Julian chuckled and continued to eat unhurriedly. You're not well. If you eat too much, you'll get indigestion. I pressed down on his chopsticks. If you like it, I'll make you some more tomorrow. Julian put down his chopsticks in a good mood. Brother. Yes. He looked at me questioningly. All these years, living here alone, have you ever felt lonely? When I had just returned, the right courtyard had been bustling with people. But the moment I entered the left courtyard, it had become quiet. I suddenly wondered how Julian had lived before I moved in. Did he feel lonely? Did he want to go and talk to the Duke of Pei? To get a little fatherly love? I used to, Julian said, his expression faint. But I got used to it. Now that you're here, I don't feel it anymore. I was stunned. You don't blame me for disturbing your peace. Chloe has always been so confident. Why are you so meek today? He handed me a cup of tea. I'm honored to have been pulled in at the last minute to make up the numbers. I was very moved. A mixture of feelings in my heart. There was pity, and there was guilt. If Julian died, I would definitely have a grand funeral for him. To let the world know that the Duke of Yuan's residence still had Julian. To let the world know that I, Chloe Sue, was Julian's wife, and I would be his widow for the rest of my life. Why are you crying? Julian looked at me in surprise. I quickly wiped my tears. It's nothing. Julian looked at me quietly for a long time and said nothing more. At night, Julian thought of Chloe's tear again. His heart was in a mess. Tianqing pushed the door open and placed a stack of letters on his desk. Master, the canal transport side says the river has thawed. Are you going to the opening ceremony this year? I'm not going. Julian casually opened a letter and read it carefully under the lamp. Not going to the opening ceremony either. Tianqing was muttering to himself. The events of the past 6 months had all been beyond his expectations. He felt that the masters had all gone mad. First, there was the second young master. He was clearly in love with Miss Sue, but he didn't know what had gotten into him before the wedding. He had actually abandoned Miss Sue and his family's face to go and pick up his cousin. That cousin, from head to toe, was no match for Miss Sue. The second young master was really clueless. Then there was Miss Sue. Miss Sue had been following the second young master around every day. Everyone knew she liked him. But I never expected that after the second young master ran away from the wedding, she would change the groom on the spot. She said that since it was a marriage alliance, it was the same with any of the young masters of the Pei family. He couldn't believe it when he heard it. Could a wedding be held like that? Miss Su was like a heroine. What was that line from the play? If you are heartless, I will leave you. Finally, and most strangely, was his master. When Miss Su asked the master if he was willing to marry her, he had actually agreed. How could he have agreed? Why did he agree? Miss Su had only spoken to him a few times. They were not familiar with each other. But the master had agreed so readily, even with a hint of excitement. But the master had clearly said that he would never marry and have children in his life. The master had changed. What are you calculating? Your eyes are darting around like a thief, Julian suddenly asked. Nothing. Tianqing didn't dare to say what was on his mind. He bowed and was about to leave. It's almost her birthday. Have the Hongxiong Pavilion send me all of this year's new jewelry. Be discreet. Don't let anyone see. Whose birthday? Tianqing asked. Julian gave him a faint glance. Tianqing shuddered and quickly agreed. You tell shopkeeper Do that her dowry shop is out of grain and tea. Find an honest person to supply her at the lowest price. Tianqing suddenly thought of something else. It was about the second young master's marriage. He had to send a letter to the northwest to confirm. If it was true, then his master was the real thief. Thinking of this, Tianqing couldn't look his master in the eye. He lowered his head and slipped away without a word. The room was quiet again. Julian was lost in thought again. That tear. For my birthday, Julian gave me a lot of jewelry. And every piece was beautiful. Are these all new? From which shop? I loved every piece and had never seen them before. No. Julian leaned against the head of the bed and smiled weakly. They were from my mother's dowry. They were just sitting here. So I thought I'd give them to you. They were his mother's heirlooms. I couldn't possibly accept them. But Julian said, if she were alive, she would have given them to her daughter. In-law. No matter what the reason for our marriage was. Now I was indeed Julian's wife. I didn't refuse and accepted them. Then come to my house for dinner tonight, I said with a smile. The third prince will be there too. And my shop's business has been very good lately. As if on cue, someone sent a pillow when I was sleepy. The grain and tea that were almost out of stock. Someone had sold them to me at a low price. And the quality was very good. Even that shopkeeper Do had arranged for the canal transport for me, saying he would only take the money after I had inspected the goods. Although I was not a merchant, I had been running a few shops for several years since I took them over. I had seen all kinds of people. I had never met an honest person like shopkeeper Do. My gloomy mood over the matter of the crown prince had brightened a lot. If I go, will it affect your family's mood? He asked. I quickly explained. You are my husband, the eldest son of the Duke of Yuan's residence, my parents' beloved son. In-law. Everyone will be happy to see you. He was too sensitive and self-conscious about his health. Shall I help you choose your clothes? Julian seemed to be in a good mood. He sat obediently by the bed, waiting for me to choose his clothes. I suddenly felt that this kind of life was quite good. He was completely different from Alistair. Alistair was lively, but he also had a bad temper. Julian was very quiet, and he spoke in a gentle, andante voice. He always gave me the illusion that there were no difficulties in the world, and that life would always get better. After spending this period of time with him, my temper had become much more gentle and composed. I chose a royal blue long shirt for Julian. He had fair skin, which made him look even more noble. This was Julian's first time at my house. My whole family was very surprised to see him, especially my brother. He looked him up and down and exclaimed, "Didn't they say you were emaciated and extremely ugly?" "Thank you for the compliment, brother," Julian said with a smile. "Did I praise you?" My brother frowned. Yu Yong looked at Julian curiously and called him cousin. In-law. Julian immediately responded. My brother pulled me aside. You're lucky. He's much more handsome than Alistair. I was speechless. Am I the kind of person who judges by looks? Yes, my brother said. I couldn't be bothered with him. Julian didn't know what to say, but my father and Yu Yang were listening very intently, like students in a schoolhouse. What are you talking about? Yu Yang's eyes were bright. Cousin. In-law knows so much. He even knows about the constellations. I've been sick for a long time, So I've read all kinds of books, Julian said with a smile. The third prince has an extraordinary bearing. I wonder if there are any fortune tellers in the court who can read his face. My brother squeezed past me and sat down next to Julian. There are no fortune tellers in the court. Only Mr. Ouyang from the Imperial Observatory can read faces. My father was thoughtful. Yang tilted his head. Mr. Ouyang, is he the one who likes to dress in rags, with patches on his official robes? That's him. He's so stingy, my brother said with disgust. He's always talking nonsense. I interrupted my brother. Yang has met Mr. Ouyang. Does he teach you? I saw him in the palace. One night, I saw him and my father observing the stars together. Yang said, that's not normal. Ouyang. Ouch! Dad, why did you hit me? My brother clutched his head and looked at my father. It's getting late. Let's eat, my father said. My brother was not happy and started talking to Julian about horses again. My brother was a rough man. He had studied in a private school for a few years and had little learning, but his martial arts skills were very good. According to him, no one in the world could beat him. So, his conversation topics mostly revolved around the military camp or horses. I was afraid his topics would upset Julian. After all, he had been sick for a long time. He probably hadn't even ridden a horse, let alone a carriage. But I didn't expect that Julian and my brother would get along so well. The more they talked, the closer my brother sat to Julian. I was afraid he would sit on Julian's lap. After a while, my brother went back to his room and brought out another ginseng. This is 100-year-old ginseng. Take it back and eat it. It's good for you. I was very strange. Where did you get so many 100-year-old ginsengs? Do you have that many rich friends? My brother looked around awkwardly. I knew him too well. He looked guilty. 9 times out of 10. The ginseng he had given me last time was not real. And this one was. I pinched my brother, and he endured it with a guilty conscience. He secretly told me not to let anyone else eat the last one, to bring it back and he would give it to someone else. After dinner, Yang was already very fond of Julian. He even brought out an essay he had written a few days ago and asked Julian for his opinion. Julian didn't refuse and explained it to him in a soft voice. During dinner, my father had been silent, but he had been observing Julian from time to time. I was wondering about it when my father gave me and my brother a look. We all left with various excuses and met in his study. Did you hear what Julian said just now? Dad, he said so many things tonight. Which one are you asking about? My brother asked. My father rolled his eyes at my brother. You mean the matter of Mr. Ouyang reading faces? I said. My father nodded. I've been thinking about it. This method might work. These past few months, we had been very low key, but the second prince and the fourth prince had been very high profile. The two civil official factions were fighting fiercely. Of course, sometimes we were also affected, but it was not a matter of life and death. So my father and my brother had been keeping their heads down. But are you familiar with Mr. Ouyang? I had heard of Mr. Ouyang. He had a very strange personality. He was always sarcastic when he spoke to people, and he would always look down his nose at them. He had offended many people in the court. I'll give it a try, my brother said. General Guo's son, in-law's classmate, is from the same hometown as Mr. Ouyang. I'll go and pull some strings. I'll even give him a ginseng. My brother was beaten by my father again. The matter was dropped. We returned to the room. Julian and Yang had finished talking. Julian was a little tired. I quickly said goodbye to my parents. Since it was very close, we walked back and forth. But Julian had spoken a lot tonight. I was worried he would be exhausted. Why don't you take a sedan chair? I can walk. Julian turned to look at me. Chloe, happy birthday. I smiled and said, thank you. I wish you good health and a long life. Does Chloe also wish for me to be with you for many years to come? I thought for a moment about my renovated other courtyard and smiled. Of course. Julian suddenly took my hand. I looked down at our clasped hands, my heart pounding, and I was too embarrassed to pull it away. Chloe, yes. When my mother died, there was no one with her, he suddenly said. The midwives were all rushing to bring me to him to announce the good news. By the time they came back, my mother was already gone. I was dumbfounded, the wife of a duke, and there was no one in the delivery room. But why was he suddenly talking about his mother? Julian was filled with regret. She must have been very desperate when she died. She didn't see her husband. And she didn't see her child. She didn't even leave a single word. He was shrouded in a fear and despair of death. I tightened my grip on his hand, wanting to give him some strength. But his hand was cold, without any warmth. He must have been thinking of himself from his mother's death, afraid that when he died, there would be no one with him. Tianqing was stunned. The young lady had actually asked the master to move into her room. The master was a light sleeper and had a phobia of germs. But he had actually agreed. He hadn't even waited for Tianqing to come back and get his bedding. He had carried it over himself. Had the master forgotten about his poor health? Tianqing closed the door of the empty bedroom and ran out of the Pei residence. Someone was waiting for him outside. He immediately handed him a letter. Master Hong, here's what you asked for. Is it that the master has a grudge against this Lu Chang? The brother's will. Tianqing brushed him off and eagerly opened the letter. After reading it, he slapped his head. So it's true. The master is really a thief. Thea Chao's husband, Lu Chang, was a subordinate of General Gua in the northwest. He was a good man with a bright future. He had actually been very good to Thea for these 5 years. The couple had lived a good life. But last year, Lu Chang had found letters between Thea and Alistair under the bed. The couple had a big fight, and Lu Chang had even hit Thea. Thea had immediately written to Alistair. Alistair had ridden to the northwest overnight and had beaten Lu Chang. The matter had gotten out of hand, and Lu Chang had divorced Thea on the grounds of adultery. Why was Tianqing so surprised? Because it was Julian who had someone arrange for Lu Chang to find the letters. Is the master doing this on purpose? Is he trying to get rid of the second young master and marry Miss Su? Intercepting. No wonder he had agreed to the marriage so quickly. Thief. What a thief. Even he, his attendant, had been kept in the dark. He had even helped the master cry and complain that day and had been spat on by Sister Yara. I don't know why, but I had taken the initiative to ask Julian to move into my room. I think it was because I was too soft-hearted, afraid that if he died in the middle of the night, there would be no one with him. Good night, my lady. Julian lay down and said to me softly. I went to bed with mixed feelings, but fortunately, Julian was a very quiet sleeper. Listening to his light breathing, I felt surprisingly calm and fell asleep after a while. The next morning, Julian did not look well. He had dark circles under his eyes. Did you not sleep well last night? Or are you not feeling well somewhere? Should I call a doctor? No, I slept very well, Julian said with a smile. With my lady by my side, it was the first time I slept so soundly. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief when I went to pay my respects to my mother in law in the morning. Her expression was very strange when she found out that I had slept with Julian last night. She asked me indirectly if we had consummated the marriage. I told her the truth, that we hadn't. Only then did my mother in law's expression soften. In the afternoon, I went back to my parents' house. My father and my brother were not there, so I did needlework with my mother. My mother was making shoes for my brother, and I was continuing to make mourning clothes. I had been busy lately, and in several months, I had only made 3 sets. Did you sleep together last night? How is Julian's health? Mother, what are you thinking? His health is so poor. How could he? I was speechless. My mother sighed again. Mother, Chloe. My brother came back like a gust of wind, his face full of excitement. Behind him was Yu Yang. My mother and I were very puzzled. Why is Yu Yang here now? Has something happened? I quickly poured Yu Yang a cup of warm tea. Mr. Yang has read Yu Yang's face. He said he has a prominent forehead, 9 rising bones, and is a person of great fortune. I was very surprised. How do you know Mr. Yang? Why did he suddenly read your face? Yu Yang said with a grin. Cousin in law gave me some advice. He told me to go to the school at the 3rd quarter of the Mao hour this morning, through the east gate, and there would be a fateful encounter. Yu Yang had obediently gone through the east gate, but he had almost been hit by a tile. He was about to leave, but he was afraid that someone else would be hit, so he waited on the road. As it happened, Mr. Yang passed by, and he warned him. And then, Mr. Yang had read his face. Does everyone in the court know about this? Of course. With me here, it's no secret, my brother said with a smile. Our third prince is indeed a fortunate person. I rolled my eyes at my brother and pulled Yu Yang to the side, asking him in a small voice, "What else did your cousin in-law say to you?" He also said that tonight I should wash my mother's feet. If my father happens to see, I should not boast of my filial piety, but just bring him a basin of hot water as well. I clicked my tongue. A dying man. Had he become a ghost? How could he be so good at fortune telling? At night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. I kept thinking about Julian. The doctor said he wouldn't last until spring, but it was already February. I looked at Julian's sleeping face. His skin was fair, and his cheeks were rosy. Could it be that his illness had been cured? I didn't sleep well all night. The next day, I went to the shop to inspect. On the way, I saw Shopkeeper Do. This was a common occurrence. But the person who was whispering with Shopkeeper Do was not ordinary. "Miss, does Tianqing know Shopkeeper Do?" Yara asked suspiciously. Shopkeeper Do managed 2 large shops, and many small shops in and out of the capital bought goods from him. But no one knew who Shopkeeper Do's backer was. Could it be that his backer was Julian? If it were before, I would have immediately dismissed my thought as absurd. But now, I actually felt it was a matter of course. I returned to my parents' house with a heavy heart. I ran into my brother again, who came back in a flurry. He shouted, "Julian is a god." He said that the emperor had indeed gone to the Phoenix Palace the night before, and Yu Yang had indeed washed the emperor's feet. The matron of the Phoenix Palace said that that night, the family of 3 had been talking and laughing. Very warm. How does he know everything? Could it be that the tile that hit Yu Yang was thrown by him? Ha ha ha. I wanted to argue with my brother, but I couldn't say a word. I felt that no one in this world could communicate with ghosts and spirits and tell fortunes. Only people could be old and cunning. This Julian. It seems we know too little about him. At night, when I was sleeping, I wanted to ask Julian openly, but the words got stuck in my throat. I felt it would be rude. "Chloe, he suddenly spoke, and I was startled. I was afraid he would see that I was secretly looking at him. I'm a normal man too. If you keep staring at me like that, I'll have ideas too." He looked at me helplessly. "You're a normal man," I blurted out. Wasn't he just hanging on by a thread? How could he be normal? "Chloe." Julian suddenly propped himself up and stared at my face. "Your words are very hurtful. Do I have to prove it?" My mouth twitched, because his body had already told me whether he was normal or not. I was suddenly afraid, and my voice began to tremble. When did you become normal? You give me a chance to prove it first, and then I'll tell you." "Okay." He kissed me. My mind went blank. We had been sleeping together for 7 or 8 days. I had never thought that we would consummate the marriage. But by the time I came to my senses, he had already proven it. He was very normal. Your illness is cured." Actually, I was sick at first. He said that before he was 10, his health was indeed poor, but no one in the Duke's residence had hired a doctor for him. He thought that his life had been bought with his mother's life. He could not give up easily. So, he had taken all his silver and had a trusted servant go and inform his uncle. His uncle had helped him find a doctor and had cured his illness. After he recovered, he was too lazy to deal with the Pei family. All these years, he had kept his courtyard gate closed and had said that he was bedridden and dying. In reality, he had been doing business all along and had already made a name for himself. I was originally planning to fake my death and escape, but then he suddenly came and asked me if I was willing to marry you. I was trying to digest his words. At this point, I sat up. "Why were you willing?" I thought he was kind, but after thinking about it for a while, I felt that there was more to it. Because it was Chloe. He stroked my head. "If you were here, staying at the Pei residence seemed to be quite good." I didn't believe him. "Is that really so? Why do I feel like you had a plan?" "Chloe, you're sitting like that, and the wind is blowing. I'm cold." I had to lie down again. He held me in his arms and kissed me again. My mind went blank, and I forgot what I was thinking. The next day, I dragged Julian home. Julian apologized to my parents. Of course, my parents were happy. Especially my mother. She was crying and laughing. "It's so good that Chloe doesn't have to be a widow." The reason my father was happy was, of course, that he thought Julian was smarter than Alistair. My brother was pacing back and forth in the room. Then he suddenly stopped and stared at Julian. I have a question I don't know if I should ask. Julian sighed. If it's really difficult, you don't have to ask, brother. No, I can't help it. My brother stared at him. His eyes narrowed. Alistair was supposed to pick up Thea Chiao. Why did he run off at the wedding? Was it your doing? I looked at Julian in surprise. Julian drank his tea. You're joking. Such a thing. How could I do it? My brother breathed a sigh of relief. Then I'm relieved. A person can't be that smart and that despicable. Let's talk about the third prince. Julian interrupted my brother. I pulled my brother and stared at Julian. I admit, Julian was very guilty. Your brother's guess just now was right. My brother jumped up and slapped him. You're really despicable. But I like it. Julian looked at me pleadingly. I glared at him. He deserved it. In June, Yu Yang was named the crown prince. At the end of this month, I became pregnant. In April, when my pregnancy was showing and I couldn't hide it, the Duke and Duchess of Pei were so shocked they couldn't recover for a long time. My brother found a famous doctor for my husband, and he has recovered, I said in a low voice. The Duchess's face was very ugly. The Duke clapped his hands and laughed. He was truly happy. Although he had not had much affection for this son over the years, he was his own flesh and blood, so he would not have wished for him to die. Moreover, I heard that the Duke and his late wife were childhood sweethearts and had a very good relationship. When I went out, I ran into Alistair. The moment he entered the door, he saw my stomach and was in disbelief. You're pregnant? Yes. Alistair went crazy. Isn't my brother supposed to be dying? Why are you pregnant? I rolled my eyes at him. Chloe, you're lying to me, aren't you? Your stomach is fake. What are you talking about? We've been married for almost a year. Why can't I be pregnant? You need to calm down. Alistair collapsed on the ground. I was still waiting for him to die. And you tell me you're having his child. Chloe, you really don't want me anymore. I wanted to kick him. Chloe, Julian came to pick me up. His steps light. When he went down the stairs, he was afraid I would be tired. So he picked me up. Alistair sat on the steps, screaming, Julian, you're a despicable villain. Julian ignored him. All right, put me down. I was at a loss for words. Why are you being so childish? Julian carefully put me down and mumbled. So he won't keep pestering you. How could he have known you were healthy? It was you who was so cunning and deceived everyone for so many years. He said softly. If not for that, how could I have married you? Yes, yes. You're the best. Of course. Julian stroked my stomach. Very amazing. I took Julian's hand and we slowly walked home. The renovated other courtyard, from now on, would only be for our family of 3. It seems quite good. A different kind of life. When the spring flowers bloomed and the birds sang, Julian and I would drink tea together, watching our child run around in the courtyard, making a fuss. There is no one way to live a happy life. In short, as long as I am happy, that is happiness.